Hello, everybody. Welcome to this week's edition of WeAreSC.com's Arledge's 10 Questions Signing Day edition. This is going to be all about recruiting, especially this past class, and maybe even a little bit about what's coming up in the portal and next year. Who knows where the game may go? We have our usual contestants. Guys, I'm going to give you a little bit more time to answer the questions today than usual. I mean, Eric always takes a little bit more time because that's what he does. But Mark, if you want a little bit more, because we have a lot of recruiting stuff to cover and and we want to get some information out. Okay, let's just jump right in. Question number one: what's the biggest surprise of this USC recruiting class? Mark, start us off.
For me, we're in year four of Lincoln Riley's tenure, or going into year four as far as recruiting is concerned. The lack of California presence, to me, that is just still, you would think going into this year, and I know it's a little bit more nuanced. It's not just, well, they didn't have the players they wanted, and that's why they went across the country to get their players. There's more involved than that. But when you combine that and not hitting on the linebackers still again, to me, that was the biggest surprise. More, it's emphasized really on, you look at the numbers. You have Alabama, they're getting 7 guys from the state of California. USC's the bridesmaid again, they got 5. Again, there's more involved. Alabama might have recruited a player that USC didn't want. That's besides the point. But it's still surprising that USC had, what, 21, 22 commitments, and only 5 are from the state. That's, again, that's got to change at some point. You got to reverse that number.
Eric, what do you think? Biggest surprise?
I don't know if I'm going to answer your question. So I don't know if we're getting off to a great start here in the
That's
game.
all right. Hey, let's just do what we always do. Just say whatever you want to say. Let's go.
Here it is. How good the decommitments are, how good this class could have been. Like when you start, I mean, Justice Terry, Isaiah Gibson, Jerome Miles was in there, Anquan Fagans was way in there, Drake Stubbs was in there. I know Julian Lewis is a talent, and you're okay with how things went at quarterback. Ty Jackson, Jaden Perlotti, like Cardi Smith, Shamarno. I guess after like 6-6 and all of that stuff, it's surprising how many big time names were in this class that USC just for one reason or another didn't finish with.
Yeah. And I think maybe those two answers are related in a way, right? It's one thing to get a kid to come out to LA, hang out with Lincoln Riley, meet Aaron Donald, see the sunshine, see the beach, and decide, wow, this is really a cool place. I want to go here. It's another thing months later to hold on to that kid when everybody in his family, everybody at his high school, everybody in his neighborhood, everybody at church, everybody wants that kid to go closer to home.
So, because I understand where you're going with this, Chris. So then how does the Hayden Lowe loss work for us? Because he actually waited his time a little bit before he committed, because, you had Justice Terry and Isaiah Gibson and those things going on. But those guys dropped off the radar back in what? End of April, May. And then Hayden Lowe came on during the summer. So where was our guys in his neighborhood piling on saying, stay home, don't go to Miami?
Well, a couple of things about that. One is I don't have access to Hayden Lowe's bank records, so there's vital information that I don't possess. But on top of that, it's different. It's different in Southern California, right? It's different. If you go to Oklahoma, there are a handful of Oklahoma State fans, but everybody is about Sooner football. Everybody, and it's true throughout the South. All these programs. I don't know that that's the case in Southern California. I mean, college football isn't that big a deal in LA. It's just not. So I think and to some extent, I think that puts you at a slight disadvantage if you're USC in recruiting. But at the same time, it's also the case that no matter where you are, it's easier to keep hometown kids to stick than it is to keep kids from across the country to stick, which is not a criticism of Riley recruiting nationwide. To some extent, he has to do it. especially along the defensive front, right? I don't think you can just recruit Southern California and have a great defensive line. That's the one area where you have to recruit nationally, and frankly, that's the one area of the recruiting class that I think is legitimately very, very good. But I think there is some relationship between what both of you guys were saying here, and so it is what it is. That would have been pretty amazing recruiting class if they could have held on to those other guys. I mean, that's a class that even Jimbo couldn't buy with all the oil money in Texas. But it is what it is. Okay, you both get a point. I liked both answers. Okay, question number 2. The most important new Trojan, not nicknamed Thanos. I'm going to take the easy answer off the table. But of the other guys in this class, who's the most important guy that USC landed this time? Eric?
So Houston Longstreet, just because you needed a quarterback, but if you had brought in Julian Lewis, I would be okay with that. So I'm not gonna say him. It's Aaron Dunn for me at left tackle. He's a guy where you thought you had a good shot to get him when he initially committed, and then it's to Utah. So not only did you have to stick with him, but you had to kind of figure out your NIL approach and getting a potential big time left tackle and a guy that Lincoln Riley said was maybe the most athletic tackle that they saw in the whole thing. Now, he also said a couple years ago that Tackett Curtis was like the best linebacker in the country. So we'll see kind of how that plays out. But that to me was kind of a statement to go into Utah to flip a Utah guy at a position where, that you can develop, I think, interior linemen at the tackle spots. You really need that kind of high end athleticism and that sort of thing for the tackle spot. So he'll be my guy for that one.
Okay, good answer. Mark, what do you got?
Yeah, I saw Eric working there. I know where he came from with that. Is it better to have an elite left tackle or an elite quarterback? So I know which answer he was going with that one. Now, I'm going to take the Houston Longstreet answer because we're talking about recruiting. And while, yeah, you want to have an elite left tackle, you still need to have the face of your program. And rarely is your left tackle the face of the program. You need that number one quarterback type of guy. So from an optics, just strictly from the optics, Houston Longstreet is the most important guy after Thanos, just from that advantage point.
Yeah, so I think I agree with you in terms of optics. Losing 5-star quarterbacks from 30 miles away is disastrous in terms of the optics of recruiting, how other high school players see the program. I'll say this: I have a different name, and I don't think anybody would expect it. I think Floyd Bacard. It may be the second most important recruit in this class. Everybody's going to say, "What? He's just a 3-star." That guy's not a 3-star. I don't care what you say. He's not a 3-star. Look at his size. Look at how he moves. Look at his offer list. The USC is going to be able to find competent quarterbacks, and you can find competent quarterbacks in the portal every year, and a lot of them would want to play for Lincoln Riley. So I'm glad that they have Longstreet, but if they didn't have an elite quarterback in this class, they would find one. It's hard to find elite defensive linemen, and USC pulled in what I think is an extraordinarily underrated class. And I think legitimately a national championship caliber defensive line class. And I think Boucard's going to be a huge part of that. That kid is big and he's athletic. And and if you look at the teams that wanted him, that's not a 3-star offer list. That is a high 4-star offer list, which is probably where he should have been. Fine, you both get a point. I don't know. I mean, I like both your answers. I want somebody to say something dumb so I can subtract a couple of points and we can get some separation, as Lincoln Riley always wants to talk about. How about,
I will help you with that. Don't worry.
yeah, no, I look, there was never a doubt, Mark. I'm just biding my time. All right, how about this though? we talked about all these decommitments, and then there were some misses who never did commit. What was the biggest miss in this recruiting class, Mark?
So I'm going to stay on the same general theme here. I could say it was Junior Tui Halamaka, but that happened 3 years ago. I could say Kingston Viliamuasa, but that happened last year. I could say Madden Faremo this year. See where I'm going? You see the road I'm going down here? It's you're missing out on the best linebacker in your state, in your backyard. We're not even talking about Northern California. We're talking about Southern California. We're talking about Bishop Alamany. We're talking about Bosco. We're talking about Jay Sarah and San Juan Capistrano. It's Madden Faremo. You needed, as much as we appreciate Matai Tagoai, he's a linebacker. He's probably more of a safety type of player. We'll see if he can grow in. But when's USC going to get that local big time linebacker? It's been a while.
Yeah,
And it's always Notre Dame playing that. We're going to take this guy from you. Same
that
school.
does make it, which makes it twice as bad. Eric, who's the biggest miss this time?
I mean, it's Madden, right? But to not go with the same thing, I'll go a different direction. So the Marco Jones is in the conversation for me again, a Northern California guy, but a guy in state, and you needed so much pass rushing, and you saw from the defense this year, if you don't have it, you're a different defense if you have an edge guy or without it. I love two answers, so I'll go with the different one again. Local, a guy that we have been talking about for 4 years now, Dijon Lee, that goes to Alabama. I mean, they don't, with what we've seen that they want at corner, a guy who's probably got like a 9 foot wingspan and can run and fly and all that stuff. These are guys that you have to play well enough to make sure that you're an option for them. They haven't done it, and they did not go get those guys in this class. The fact that he kind of locked in Alabama, Georgia, and those are the schools that the guys in this area are looking at right now. And so to lose a corner like that again, were you ever kind of out front for him? Probably not. But that's a problem. That's a problem for all these guys, is that we talked for a long time about you need to stop giving these guys reasons to go somewhere else. And I think you played well enough if you don't look at the record, but then the record set and the way I think you recruit some of these guys makes it so that their best option is heading out of here.
Yeah, it's not all NIL these days, right? I mean, NIL is hugely important, but it's not all NIL. Kids from Southern California, say Alabama and Georgia, they're skipping. You have to fly over a lot of programs that pay a lot more money in NIL than those two to get to those places. But a lot of kids want to play at the top programs and play in the biggest games. And as long as USC is going to lose 5 or 6 games a year, they're going to put themselves in a position where local kids are interested in going elsewhere. That was true when Pete Carroll came along too, right? I mean, he couldn't keep the Lorenzo Bookers of the world. It was surprising to a lot of people when he kept Sean Cody around, because you have to win. You have to pay money, but you also have to win, and USC is just not winning enough, and that's a gigantic problem. Uh, it's interesting that last year everybody was talking about how great the California linebacker class looked this year. And now you have this gigantic hole in the recruiting class at linebacker. I think the biggest miss, though, is not the local kid. I think the biggest miss is Ty Jackson. I think Ty Jackson is going to be a first-round pick in 3 years. He needs to put on a little bit of size to do that. But that kid is unbelievably athletic. He's long. He is physical. That is a great football player. And in a year where Florida State was a grease fire, Florida was no good, and you spent most of the year talking about whether or not Napier would even keep his job. You're talking about a kid who said he was going to completely shut down his recruiting. To lose him at the last minute hurts really badly. That's a guy. That's a guy who you're going to want, and a few years from now, after he's been an All-American at a different school, We're going to regret it. Losing Madden is a problem. I think USC can find another Madden in the transfer portal in a year or two. Maybe not. Maybe he's better than I think he is. They're not going to find another Ty Jackson. They're just not. So I'm pretty bummed about that. All right, I'm going to give myself a point. All right, guys. Question number 4. Been a lot of talk about Jaem Stewart, and for good reason. He is most comparable to what former USC recruit? If somebody says, who is this kid? What's he all about? What's he like? Who would you compare him to for USC fans? Eric, give it a shot.
I'm gonna go Leonard Williams with him. I think he's same sort of height, weight coming in, and a guy that has the frame to put on a bunch more. Crazy athletic. You're pulling him out of the Southeast away from a bunch of programs over there that wanted him. And I think the versatility on the defensive line too, right? Is he a tackle? Is he an end? Can he do both? Can he play nose? Like you can do a bunch of stuff with him. And from everything that you are hearing, I mean, Jakeem's got some questions, right? He's played 12 varsity games. He came up a year, didn't play this year. Like just in terms of that, there's red flags there that you can't deny. But what you hear about him is that this guy works and he wants it, and all the intangibles and all of that are there. Leonard Williams worked when he was at USC, and so I think those are the he's kind of the comp. You know, I don't know if it's I don't know how exact those things always are, but he's the guy that sort of jumped out as comparable for me.
Mark, I'm not going to lie. He's the guy I was thinking too. Do you have a better answer than that?
I don't know if it's a better answer, but that was going to be the low-hanging fruit answer. So I get why Eric went there. I got a couple of guys.
All right.
I'm going to settle on one of them. If if Big Kenichi Udeze came in year 2 instead of year 1, like Baby Huey, it's a similar type of player. But I'm going to settle in at Lawrence Jackson. Again, same body style. You can definitely got your big defensive end out there, but also got enough size that you could probably slide him inside, play that 3 technique if you need to. So since Eric took the easy answer, I'm going to go back into history a little bit. I'm going to go with LoJack because he wrecked and he worked. I think he led USC in sacks one year as well. I mean, he was a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah, very good football player. It may be low-hanging fruit. I'm still going to give Eric the point. Maybe you'll get a low-hanging fruit answer yourself. I don't know. But I think I think Leonard Williams, the big cat, is the right answer in terms of position, athleticism, size, taking them from across the country. We'll see. You don't always know. I mean, it wasn't all that long ago that USC got the best edge rusher in the country, and he barely did more than I did. And so you don't know for sure, but geez, if this kid doesn't turn out to be a player, he will be wasting an immense amount of talent. And he's a much bigger kid than Corey Foreman was, right? I mean, Corey Foreman was not 280. I mean, Corey Foreman is a guy who you don't, in retrospect, you don't know whether he's got the athleticism to be a stand-up guy on the outside, or whether he needs to put on weight in order to put his hand down and play a traditional defensive end. I don't think there are any such questions with Stewart. He is a big-bodied dude who is a legitimate defensive end, and I think it's going to be a great one. I'm looking forward to it. Okay, what's the best position group in this recruiting class, Mark? Low-hanging fruit. Do it. Do it.
No, it's the defensive line. There's nowhere else to go with this answer. So I mean, we've talked about Thanos. You've mentioned Floyd Bucard. We haven't mentioned Gus Cordova's name yet, who is really, really underrated, probably because he likes peanuts too much.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned the state of Oklahoma. USC went in and took Cash Jacobson from some podunk town called Jenks, Oklahoma, that Oklahoma wanted really bad, the Sooners. And USC said, we'll take you. I mean, that's another 6'5", 290-pound guy. I mean, we're talking
Who
about,
also has who also has a really nice highlight tape. I mean,
yeah,
really looks good on film.
you look at that defensive line class across the board. It's versatile, it's got size, it's got athleticism, without a doubt. It crosses the finish line just ahead of the offensive line hall.
Okay. Mark said literally that's the only answer you can give. Are you going to give the exact same answer?
What quarterback? No, you got like you
I
go
mean,
and
if
get
that's go ahead, give
the
that answer.
absolute best option out there for you, and it's a spot where only one guy has to play. I don't need any depth. Just give me that guy.
Well, if you don't need any depth, you'll love this USC team because we don't have any at that
There it
spot.
is. So
So
hold on to play defense on myself a little bit because I'll quarterback I think is an easy one because it's one guy for one spot. I think the safety group, and I won't say the entire defensive back group. I think that the safeties, the three safeties, are going to, if we're looking at who's going to outplay their sort of star ranking in that group, James Johnson, D. Reddick, and Stephen Miller, those guys can play. They can play. And I thought it was interesting and maybe not surprising, but certainly on our same wavelength when Lincoln Riley was asked, like, hey, who's your guy in this class that's going to outplay that? And he said Desmond Stevens last year. And that was a guy that showed up ready to go. He D Reddick, James Johnson. Those were the first two names that he mentioned. I think those guys are football players, and I think they're going to come in and do some things.
yeah, that's a great class. And you already mentioned Aaron Dunn. This is a really nice class of tackles too, right? You got the two very highly regarded four-star guys, and then you have what you'd consider a project because he's a three-star player who wasn't a big name, and Elijah Vicona. But what a project! That kid is enormous, and for a big guy, seems to have really good feet. I don't know if he's going to stick as a tackle or if he's a guy you move inside. But either way, a guy that big that has good feet is probably somebody you're going to be able to teach to be a pretty good football player. I mean, that's a really good threesome at the offensive tackle spot, which is helpful because USC hasn't recruited as well at tackle as they have at the inside positions over the last couple of years. So all good answers, including mine. But I'm going to give the point to Mark because he went ahead and took the low hanging fruit and he deserved it.
Hey, Chris, what time is it?
What time is it?
Is it game time?
It is game time, Mark, and I appreciate you bringing that up because I would have forgotten about it. Hey, the USC season is largely over. They're going to have a bowl game somewhere, and game time would be a pretty good place to get bowl tickets, especially if the rumors are true and maybe we're playing somebody like Texas A&M. That'd be a bowl game worth going to. I don't know if they're true. We don't know. But how about Juju Watkins? Anybody want to see Juju Watkins? I hear she's pretty good. That's the sort of thing you may want to go check out Game Time about. Go to the Game Time app, download it. You should have downloaded already. I tell you this every week. If you haven't done it, I'm going to start getting upset with you at some point. Download the app. You put in on3 ON and the number 3. You get $20 off your first purchase. It's a great. It's actually a great deal. You can see you can see your seats on the app. You see exactly what it's going to look like where you're sitting. Lots of selection, good prices. I'm in favor of using the Game Time app. I've used it myself. I'll use it again. I don't know, guys. Do you have anything to add to that? I think I've said what I should say, but it is. It's a good resource.
Great resource.
All right. Thank you, Mark. Appreciate that. All right. Eric may have already answered this question. He does that sometimes. But question number 6 is, who's going to surprise the most? Who's the guy out of this recruiting class that people aren't necessarily talking about, but will be in 2 or 3 years? Eric, go ahead. You want to give the same answer again? Or are you going to mix it up?
No, I'm gonna sort of challenge myself a little bit because there are guys. Look, we can't just talk about 4 guys in this class. It's spread out pretty well, and I feel like we should hit on as many as we can. I don't know if this is cheating because technically he's the highest rated guy in his position group, but Romero Eisen at wide receiver, I think in this offense has a chance to be that like explosive guy that USC was missing for just huge chunks of this year. I think on 3 had him as in the USC class as kind of the potential, breakout guy that maybe is overlooked. So again, a 4-star guy, but 357 nationally, like not coming in as a top 100 guy, top 150 guy. I think it's a good wide receiver class, good enough. But I think he ends up being the guy from that group.
That's a good answer. I like that. Mark, what do you think? You have somebody we haven't been talking about?
I mean, I know we're going to have to start talking about who's going to be USC center in the future. I could talk about Willie Washer. I mean, when you talk to him, the dude's a mauler. I mean, he is a no nonsense. I'm going to work. I'm going to bring my lunch pail. Let's just get this freaking job done type of guy. Now, it's not a glamorous position. I don't think he'll be that guy that is going to surprise everybody just because USC has stacked their offensive line room so well these last 2 or 3 classes. And he came in, he's part of this class. But Eric talked about him already. He's a Swiss Army knife. His name's James Johnson. I don't know if he's necessarily going to even play defense. He can play every single position that doesn't require you putting your hand in the dirt and playing offensive line or defensive line. So did USC find their Travis Hunter light? I mean, is he going to be one of those types of players where is he an Adoree Jackson type of guy? Just get him on the field and see where he produces. I really like his game. There's a lot of film to appreciate with him.
Yeah, maybe Marquise Lee, right? That was a guy that everybody was saying, I'm not sure what side of the ball he's going to play on, but he's going to be good somewhere. Yeah, good answer. I got another one that's similar to Eric's answer, and that is Tuna Kynes. Um, this is a kid, he's not small. Ran a 10.45 in the 100, so he can really run. This is a fast wide receiver class. It would have been faster if they would have held on to the 5-star from Utah, which they didn't. But it is a class with some guys who can really run. Eisen can really run. Tanook Hines can really run. They've added some speed to the room. They already have some speed in that room, but they've added some this year. I think Hines is a kid. I was really impressed by his film, and I know there's some people out in this part of the world who think he's going to be a really good football player, and so I'm looking forward to that. Fine, still tied, whatever. Nobody cares about the score anyway, except the people who complain when Mark gets cheated, which will happen, but I'm going to wait till the end of the game to do that. Question number 7. Does USC have a giant linebacker recruiting problem after this class? We talked about the misses at linebacker. How serious is this problem going to be moving forward? Is this something they can cover up in the transfer portal, or is this going to be the sort of problem that we had with Clay Helton, who was the son of an O-line coach, but apparently never liked O-linemen because he didn't recruit any, and we're still paying the price years later? What do you think? Whose turn is it? I think it's Eric's turn. No, it's not Eric's turn. It's Mark's turn. Go ahead, Mark.
So you can mask this problem with the transfer portal. I mean, USC's been hitting it there with the linebackers anyways. And I think you get a little bit, and I'm using, a little bit of latitude because Eric Gentry's coming back. So it kind of gives you that somebody you can put in there at linebacker while you're figuring out who you're going to go grab out of the transfer portal. And you got young talent back there. We've talked about Desmond Stevens. You got Jaden Walker. You got those guys coming back. So you hate losing your linebacker coach. That doesn't help. But I think you can go find somebody that can come in and be an impact type of player in the transfer portal, that position.
Look, let's talk about Ince just for a second. I didn't know that we were going to lose him this year, but this is a guy who we knew wasn't going to be USC lifer. He came over and said he wanted to be a head coach again at a major program, and with his resume, it was shocking they got him to be a linebacker coach even for a year. So I didn't want to lose him, but we knew it was going to happen. All right, Mark says, don't worry about it. Don't worry, be happy. Their linebackers grow on trees in the transfer portal. Just walk out there and grab a few. He said we got some young guys. There are some young, talented linebackers on the team. Last year's class was good, but the class before that doesn't really have anything, and this class doesn't really have anything. I mean, Matai is a fantastic prospect. I don't know he's a linebacker. I don't know what he is. He's a football player, but he weighs less than I do, which is sad for both him and for me. And so I don't know if he's really a linebacker. That's 2 out of 3 classes where you don't really have guys that you expect to do much. That strikes me as a huge problem, Eric. Is it a huge problem?
Yeah. Yes. It certainly was in this class where you thought, okay, the defense is going to show something. You can point to, hey, our top two guys took like 750 snaps and got pretty clean runs at running backs for the most part. Like they had a chance to be active and make plays all over the field. You'd think that that would be exciting for linebackers, and they were close on Riley Pajon. He ends up going to Ohio State. Noah McHale's a guy that's in-state local that they didn't get. We talked about Madden a lot. Like they went after they went after a number of guys and sort of missed and missed and missed. Maybe close, but you needed to build on that class because Elijah Newby, I think, has potential there, but you're still asking him to kind of make that transition from edge to the middle, and we've seen that kind of go wrong over and over and over. Desmond Stevens, I think you like there. Haven't really seen Jaden Walker, but you needed to add on to that group to kind of keep that going. And we talked about Matai, like maybe you're adding nobody behind them right now, and you just don't at positions like that in the front seven. You just don't want empty classes. You don't want to not be continuing to add talent. And so yeah, that's a problem until it's not. Until they go get linebackers. That's a spot where you can't be empty when there's that many targets for you in one class.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're in a position where maybe you go out and get a guy who just has 1 year of eligibility because they have holes that they need to plug. But I think you have to do that for multiple years now, or you go and find a guy who's a younger guy who you think can play.
And those will be in
Uh,
there. I mean, the transfer portal is going to have a million guys in it. Like there's a guy in there with 4 years left that you're going to like enough where that could be an answer.
Yeah, well, and we'll see. One of the upsides to having decommitments and to striking out on guys you want at the end is maybe there's still some money in the piggy bank because you're going to need some to get a guy like that, and they're going to have to spend some money on a linebacker. Last year we thought they're going to have to spend some money on defensive tackles. They didn't, or they weren't able or willing to spend enough. But this year you look at it and say they're going to have to spend money on the linebacker or two, and I think a guy with multiple years because that's just a glaring hole, and that's what kills you. And it's not just one recruiting class, right? You can have one cycle where you don't have a bunch of bodies at a position, and as long as you recruit well there consistently, the 1 year won't necessarily hurt you. But 2 out of 3 years, I don't know. 2 out of 3 years scares me a great deal. So they're gonna have to do something with that. Eric gets a point because I wanted to be down and pessimistic on this question, and he matched that energy. I appreciate that. Don't shake your head like that, Mark. I'll
I
give
didn't
you.
shake my
I'll throw
head.
you a bone. I'll throw you a bone. Not
I
yet,
shook
though.
my head. I just find it ironic that he used my answer from earlier in the show to make his case.
It's not ironic. He's a cheater. I mean, this is a guy.
Okay.
This is a guy who in high school was constantly looking at the papers next to him, and that's just who he is. Most of what he writes comes from drafts that I've sent to him, and then he takes it, puts his name on it, and publishes it. And then at that point, what am I going to do? All right, question number 8, and we're going to have to give a new answer here because we just talked about one of them. What must USC land in the transfer portal? Don't give me 8 or 9 positions. I get that, but what do they really have to do, Eric?
They need probably two starting offensive linemen, and they have got to. I know people like the talent on the edge on defense, and okay, if that group takes a step forward, I don't care if it's an edge guy, I don't care if it's a tackle. You've got to get someone that can get into the backfield and is a problem for opposing offensive coordinators that say we have to do something about that guy. And I don't think you're coming into the season next year like could Cam Fountain be a guy that becomes that? Probably, but we also thought probably the wide receivers are going to give defensive coordinators nightmares and you didn't do that. So the transfer portal exists to provide sure things for programs that think they're going to be good, rosters that think they're going to be good. And so I think you have to get that on the defensive side up front. But starting out, a couple starting offensive linemen for sure.
Those are two pretty solid answers, Mark. I know you don't disagree with those. What else you got?
I'm surprised, that he didn't have a quarterback in that list. I mean, you asked for the top three needs, right? I got quarterback, I got linebacker, I've got experienced offensive line.
What kind of quarterback, though? You
That's
talking
a
about?
that's a great
That's
question.
why I'm here, Mark. That's why they pay me the big bucks, because I ask great questions. What kind of
I've been
quarterback?
vacillating back and forth on this. Is it time to go, just throw your hat to the wind, say, you know what? We've got Jaden Mayava. He's our starter right now. Do I go get a multi-year guy out of the transfer portal who is going to challenge for that? Do you go get a one-year stopgap guy who can come in and play right now and help this team win and not disrupt the natural timeline of Husan Longstreet? What kind of quarterback are you looking for? Regardless, you've only got two scholarship quarterbacks, and right now you only have one. So you're going to the bowl game with Jaden Mayava. Your backup is a preferred walk-on in Gage Roy, because your third string, Jake Jensen, is following Miller Moss into the transfer portal. You need another scholarship quarterback, is my point.
I knew they shouldn't have given that carry to Jensen. That allowed him to showcase his talents, and now look, now he's a transfer portal guy. Okay, but you didn't answer the question. Which of those
You need a quarterback. Look, you don't ask me to get into the minutia. You ask for the top three. You need a quarterback, you need a linebacker, you need an experienced offensive lineman.
All right, I'm disappointed. I was ready to give you a point just for answering that question.
Why? Because I've earned it.
So it's an interest. Look, those are hard questions, because if you're Lincoln Riley, the question is, what do you think you have in Jaden Mayava? Do you think you have a guy who can lead you to 10 wins next year? If you do, then fine. Lincoln, even though his contract runs forever, I think till the end of time, he still has a problem on his hands if he has another 6-7 win season next year, right? A giant problem. He cannot afford to do that. And that means that he has to feel good about that quarterback spot. He's going to say he feels good about that quarterback spot, whether he does or not. I don't trust a word that comes out of his mouth right now, because you can't say I don't feel good about my quarterback room, then have Mayava leave too, and now you got a problem. You also can't flirt around with a quarterback in the portal and have Mayava leave. So if you're going to go after a guy, you better land it. If it's a guy that you think can come in and start. My own take on this is that I think Mayava is a pretty good player. I think he will develop. But if there's a guy in the portal who can work the sort of magic that Caleb Williams worked for you once upon a time, where he covers up a lot of holes on the roster, you get him right now, and you don't worry about anything else. Because a magical quarterback, ask Miami, a magical quarterback can cover up a lot of problems with roster, with coaching, whatever else. If you got a guy that can run around and make plays and is going to be a top 5 draft choice, you get him. I don't know if that guy exists. I know I've seen some of the names in the portal. I don't know if that guy exists, but if Lincoln Riley thinks that guy exists, you have to get him, and you have to get him now. You just have to. Otherwise, you have to get a depth guy. All right, Mark begged for the point. I'm going to give him the point. I'm not even sure he deserves it, but I told him I was going to throw him a bone, so I throw him a bone. All right, it's 5-5. Question number 9. Who is the first player from this recruiting class that's going to start a game at USC? Mark?
If we're going with the status quo quarterback with Jaden Mayava and Husan Longstreet, as long as Jaden doesn't get hurt, it's going to be Thanos. He's going to be the first guy out of this class on the field. Not just because of his talent, but because he's got to start earning the money he's going to be making. I mean, let's just be honest about it.
That's a pretty compelling answer, I think, Eric. Is that the right answer? Are you going to concede the point, or do you have another answer?
I feel like if I give the same answer, it's conceding the point also. So I may as well take a swing somewhere else.
Okay, let's do it. Let's hear what you got.
There aren't any better answers. It's that one, but I'm okay. I'm okay saying that it's Longstreet. Saying that I think he's got a chance to start a game next year. Yes.
I know who talked you into that answer.
Nope. Looking at it, there aren't a lot of ready-made starters in this class at the positions where you feel good about those guys, right? Harry Dalton probably physically could do it. Do they need him to start at running back next year? Probably not. I mean, there's guys like that that I think could play. But when you look, I mean, Cam Fountain was the only freshman to start a game this year. So it's not, they're not going to start 6 freshmen next year. So if Mark is taking Jakeem, I'll roll the dice that maybe Longstreet gets a start pretty quickly in his career.
It's not unusual for a starter to go down, and he's virtually guaranteed to be the second string guy at this point. Well, pending what happens in the portal. Both are pretty good answers. Mark is right, though. It's going to be Stewart because that's a place where you absolutely have to have somebody who you think can get after the quarterback. And sometimes it takes guys time to develop, but a lot of times the elite edge rushers, they're causing problems from day one. Right? South Carolina has a guy that had 8 sacks this year. USC, Drake Jackson had 8 sacks his first year. Jadeveon Clowney had, I think, 8 sacks his first year. The really talented edge guys are hard to block even when they're 18 years old. And that's a place where USC has just been awful, getting after the quarterback. And so I think he's going to play early. And I wouldn't be surprised if with his ability, he's going to make mistakes. He's going to give up contain. He's going to do some things that you wish he didn't do. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's causing problems for offensive tackles from day one. So I think Mark's right. Mark's going to get the point. That means I gave him a point he deserved. And last question, I gave him a point he probably didn't deserve. Now he has a lead. I mean, I don't know. I don't know what he's going to do, Eric. I mean, it's 6-5. You're going into question number 10. We probably already touched on this question. And so we're going to see if you can come up with a creative answer. Because if you do, I'm going to give you 2 points in the game. All right, here it is. Who's the most important recruit in the 2026 class? So I haven't asked this already. Next year's recruiting class. Who's the guy we absolutely have to have?
There's a few.
No,
and,
there's one. Who's the most important?
I'm hesitant to go because the answer is always lineman. The answer is always right. Defensive tackle, offensive tackle. Like that's what it always should be. So knowing that and saying that, I'm not going at either of those spots. RJ Sermons is my answer. A corner, Rancho Cucamonga, legacy kid, a guy that Oregon, Notre Dame, whoever else is chasing. He's on three's number 11 overall recruit, number 1 corner, a guy that is a slam dunk to USC. Slam dunk. And again, you're talking about positions that can make an impact. Having a lockdown corner is up there on the list. So there's quarterbacks out there, there's linemen, there's a lot of answers that could go here, but because I always follow the rules and just only give you one answer, that's going to be
you are known for that. Yes.
Okay.
Well, okay. That's a good answer. I certainly remember his dad, a running back back in the day, and a good player, but Junior is supposed to be the sort of lockdown corner that doesn't come around all the time. It's been a long time since USC had a true lockdown corner. I mean, Blackman was obviously very, very good, but and USC's recruited pretty well at corner over the last 8-10 years. But maybe Adoree as a freshman came in and played at an exceptionally high level from day one, but it hasn't happened very often, and it'd be a nice thing to have. Okay, good answer. I like it. What do you think?
It was a good answer. Great. But, you start in the trenches. You start up front, offensive line, defensive line. And I'm just going to stick with Jakeem Stewart, with his threat right now, that if you're going to come out west and you're going to come play for USC, you better bring it. So he's kind of got that Bernard Riley type of attitude going right now. There is no such, when it's volunteer workouts, you volunteer and you show up. It's Xavier Griffin. He's already committed. So I'm going to go with defensive line, stay up there. Whether he's a linebacker or an edge, I don't know. You just need to keep stacking that position.
Yeah, he's a special talent. No Ryder Lyons from you guys. That's interesting. I mean,
26 class, technically not a 26
Thank you.
recruit, but
I know,
You have
but
to
you
give
don't
points
expect
to that.
you don't necessarily expect your quarterback to start in year one anyway. So I'm not sure it
yeah,
matters.
he
But
was he was
yeah,
in the discussion for me, yeah, as a guy you got to go get.
I'll tell you what happens if he doesn't come to USC. He'll end up someplace like Oregon or Ohio State and will terrorize us every single year. That's what will happen if they don't land that guy. People hate ties. People hate ties. I was going to give that point to Eric, but people hate ties. And it wasn't a 2 point answer. It wasn't that good. It was a good answer, but it wasn't a 2 point answer. So I'm going to give you both a point. Mark wins. Congratulations, Mark, on, I mean, you've shown your mettle as a recruiting guru, dominating this version of Arledge's 10 questions. Guys, is there anything else we should talk about when it comes to this recruiting class that we haven't touched on?
What do you think's going to happen? I'll just ask. How many guys are they going to bring in February with that signing period?
There's not, I mean, there's not a lot out there. This early signing period is the February 4th stuff. And you have, or not February 4th, but that first Wednesday in February that we used to have. This December 4th this year became that. And I don't know, Zahir Mathis is a name that's still out there that I think, is an edge guy. I think they'll have a little bit more clarity on if there's somebody, but I don't see there being 5, 6 guys out there still at this point. So I think probably quiet, but there's always going to be one or two that kind of catch your attention, I think.
They're going to take a flyer or two on some under the radar guys that they think can play, I'm sure. But my guess is, what's that?
Jerome Miles make the final decision yet, or is he still floating around?
A&M.
Oh, he did choose that. Okay.
Yeah. This is also the time of the year when coaches start to get fired, and guys who did sign places there may be some guys who decide to reopen their recruitment in light of what happens with their coaching staff. You never know, or what happens with the first check that isn't made. So
and you've got that spring tiny portal time too, where some guys. I mean, look, we still don't know where 55% of the guys who just signed where they're actually going to take their first meaningful snaps. I mean, that's the way it goes. That's the way it is nationally right now. I mean, you see the names. Portal's not even open yet. And there's like 600 guys who are either in or have said they're going in. So it's signing day is great. You want them to start there because if it clicks, you want them there with you. But finishing second sometimes is just fine.
Well, the guys that pan out of your recruiting class, you tend to hold on to the vast majority of those guys, right? Every once in a while, one of those guys will leave, but usually the guys who leave are the guys that didn't pan out, didn't fit in quite right. So the recruiting, these recruiting classes matter because if 10 of these guys are going to be productive, of those 10, you're probably going to keep 9. So you usually do hold on to your best guys from the recruiting classes, but my guess is that most of the activity is going to be in the portal rather than in the February signing day, and that's something that they're going to need to hit there. And we talked about it last year at this time. They're going to need to hit there, and for the most part, I mean they got some hits, right? Woody Marks was fantastic. They had some, Clifton and Meyer both played much better than anybody anticipated, and were important pieces, but they didn't hit big at tackle.
You hit 6 and 6.
Defensive tackle. Yeah.
You hit 6 and 6 is what you hit. I mean, that's it, right? You hit guys that were competent, pretty productive, had some solid stuff, but nobody was that. Even Woody Marks. Woody Marks was not like the elite game breaker that some backs can be. Totally loved that he was brought in. Everything that he did was really, really good. But if you need to go into the portal to find that like guy that gets you wins, it was kind of a 6 and 6 portal thing, right? Kamari was really good. Other DBs, okay, played snaps. Linebackers played snaps. Defensive tackles good, not elite.
Probably better in the secondary. in the portal last year, right? Some of those guys, including Kamari Ramsey, who I think is a really good football player. But that's true. And there were some positions where we said they absolutely have to land guys. Defensive tackle, offensive tackle. We said they have to get guys at this spot. In fact, we didn't just say it, but Lincoln Riley essentially said it too. And they did not. And time and again, those positions came back to bite us. It's not that the guys they got at defensive tackle didn't play well. They played well, but they weren't unblockable guys. They weren't blowing up plays. They weren't moving the line of scrimmage. And that's what USC had to have. They didn't get it. So here we are again. There's some positions where they absolutely have to land some dudes, and we'll see if they do it. Maybe they have more money this year. Maybe they'll be luckier. But if you want to be better than 6-6, they can't take this roster into their opener next year. I think we all agree on that. Okay, well, good. Guys, one more recruiting season down, sort of. Although in college football these days, every day is recruiting season. So I'm not sure we're done talking about this sort of thing. But in any event, all right, thanks for joining us, everybody. And we'll see you next time. Until then, fight on.